Welcome to First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, the birthplace of congregational humanism. We carry on that tradition of free thought today, dedicated to promoting a free search for truth, meaning, and justice. Our web address is firstunitarian.org. I'm David Breeden, Senior Minister. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our assembly for Sunday, October 16th. Whether this is one of your first visits or you've been with us many times, we are delighted to have you here as part of our gathered community, able to look outside and see the beauty of this autumn day. Whether you're in person or online, those folks of you are online, we hope you'll make use of the chat feature and check in with each other during assembly. For those of you here in the room, we are delighted to see you. For all of you, I want to share, I have several announcements this morning. First one is this beautiful figure, this Earth Mother, seen here feeding all of humanity. I want to say to you that this is a strong image, and if you find it triggering or challenging in any way, I just invite you to be present with it without judgment. She will play a part in our morning, the Earth Mother. I want to say special thanks to Sandy Spieler and Liz Peterson and Mark Stillman, our accordion player, all our volunteers and the members of the climate justice team who've helped bring today together and make it happen. After assembly, while Mark is playing the closing song, you are invited to come up onto the stage and take an organic apple from one of the baskets here. Please be sure and come around and see the back of the Earth Mother. She's a 360-degree sculpture. Our mini meal today in the lower assembly hall after assembly is Ethiopian attakilt wat, which is a turmeric roasted potatoes, cabbage, and carrots. I'm always happy when we have that. Yummy. Also peas porridge hot, spicy split peas with crusty naan bread, and vanilla frosted banana cake. While downstairs, we hope you'll check out the Active Voices table, the Align table to find out about donating Halloween costumes to children who are having an experience of homelessness, and the Climate Intention tree. Kathy, wave your hand, Kathy, will be downstairs with the Climate Intention tree, so you can check that out. This is fun for all ages. At 12:15 in the Dietrich, the room next door over here, we will have a book discussion of The Seed Keeper, which is our climate justice team book selection, and I'll be talking about it during assembly, and you're welcome to the book discussion, even if you haven't read the book. Everyone is welcome. All right, and then there's chili cook-off. The chili cook-off is coming next Saturday, October 22nd. You can contact Rev. David to enter, and all of the details are in the Friday email. And if you didn't get those and want to participate, check in with me or somebody else downstairs. We can tell you about that. I have a piece that I was planning to include that I realize I have not printed out here. So let me see if I can say it. I invite you to soften your gaze or close your eyes if that feels comfortable to you. We acknowledge that the land we occupy here is the homeland, the traditional homeland of the Anishinaabe and Dakota peoples. We name this because it is still the homeland and occupied by Anishinaabe and Dakota people. And by naming this, we invite us to bring all of our full selves into this space. We acknowledge that these Anishinaabe and Dakota and more indigenous people are our neighbors, our co-workers, our loved ones, and that the ongoing challenges and oppression of genocide and colonialism are very real today. We come together in this space acknowledging all of our love, care, compassion, and complicity for all of our neighbors. Come, let us gather in community. Mark, will you play for us Star of the County Down? Thank you. Kathy, will you come and light our chalice? We begin our assembly by lighting a chalice for one of our principles or aspirations today for the seventh principle. We covenant to affirm and promote respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Thank you. Our first congregational song today is one that you do not have in the pew in front of you. It's a song by Betsy Rose called Taste and See. And what I think we'll do is I'll teach you the chorus, and we'll sing the chorus several times. Then I'll sing a verse, and we'll all sing the chorus, verse, chorus. Okay? That'll be the plan. So the lyric for the chorus, oh, look, it's going to come right up there. All right. Mike, let's go with it, and when you feel it, just start to sing, okay? Oh, taste, taste and see how good is the fruit that falls from the tree. Oh, taste, taste and see how good is the fruit of the garden. Let's do that again. Oh, taste, taste and see how good is the fruit that falls from the tree. Oh, taste, taste and see how good is the fruit of the garden. Let's do that one more time, and then I'll sing the verse, and then you'll sing the chorus back, okay? Maybe just slightly a little faster. All right, we're just working it out, y'all. Oh, taste, taste and see how good is the fruit that falls from the tree. Oh, taste, taste and see how good is the fruit of the garden. Taste the sun stored in the skin, flavor of fire and of passion. Taste the stars that dwell at the core, seeds of our joy and compassion. Oh, taste, taste and see how good taste and see how good is the fruit of the garden. Taste the rain soaked through the flesh, it lingers so sweet on the tongue. Taste the earth, the body of life, dark and rich and strong. Oh, taste, taste and see how good is the fruit that falls from the tree. Oh, taste, taste and see how good is the fruit of the garden. Thank you. Thanks, Mike. And now we will share our covenant together. Love is the spirit of this place, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. First Unitarian Society has survived and thrived for 141 years because of the dedication of our members and friends. You provide the time and talent and treasure that makes us a beacon of congregational humanism in the world, really, in the world. Your continuing support is needed now more than ever. And if you'd like to contribute today, you can do so via our website, firstunitarian.org, on PayPal, on the Vanco mobile app, using our electronic kiosk downstairs, or stopping by the office with a check or green stuff. We thank you for your support in any amount that makes the work of First Unitarian Society possible. And I have another ask, and that is for those of you online, and the rest of you when you go back and watch things online or watch a sermon that you've missed, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like and subscribe button. That helps get our message out further in the world. Thank you for that. Well, I think we have time for a story. Wonder what it could be. Thank you, Raccoon Family. Well, I think now we have to sing our children out. Go now in peace, may love guide all your ways. Beauty be the blessings of your nights and days. Truth on your lips and kindness in your deeds. Faith to follow where the human spirit leads. There were big kids and little kids in here today. First Unitarian Society is a congregational humanist community. We are here for each other. On Sundays, we take a few moments to reflect on the joys, the sorrows, and the milestones of the human experience. In doing this, we remind ourselves of the value of a moment of stillness, and we are reminded to stay in touch with our own humanity. And as a gathered community, we do this so that no one among us is alone, either in celebrating life's joys or in facing life's tragedies and burdens. We're here for each other. Today, we hold former FUS member Kathy McMahon in our thoughts. Her 24-year-old son, Michael, died on October 8th from an opioid overdose. His memorial service was held here last Tuesday. And we think of longtime FUS member Eileen Reagan. Eileen died on September 28th, and her memorial service will be held on Saturday, November 5th at 11 a.m. at the Cremation Society of Minnesota. And those details will be shared again in a upcoming Friday email. Now we take a few moments to reflect on our world and on those who work to comfort and heal the suffering, and those who work for justice. Mike? When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Mark, how about the Aaron Boat song? In The Seed Keeper, Diane Wilson writes this: "Everywhere I looked, I saw how seeds were holding the world together. They planted forests, covered meadows with wildflowers, sprouted in cracks in the sidewalk. Seeds breathed and spoke in a language all their own. Each one was a miniature time capsule, capturing years of stories in its tender flesh. How ignorant I felt compared to the brilliance contained in a single seed." In this book, Diane Wilson tells a story of courage, longing, and renewal. What seeds of courage can we find here in this book? Many of us, white people wrestling with our complicity, and many of us climate activists who work with or wish to work with Indigenous people to restore the land. Our climate justice team has been an active engine in this congregation. Volunteers come together to not only meet once a month to talk about what we're going to get done, but we get things done. We plant trees. We planted trees with Tree Trust last spring and this fall. We've been working with the Unitarian Canopy Connectors to learn about their really amazing program of growing trees on their property to then give to neighborhoods that are lacking canopy cover. We got bike racks installed. We did a workshop with Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light, meeting Unitarian Universalists from all over the city and in greater Minnesota. And we read books together. We don't just read books, but we do read books together. We've read some wonderful things and had great discussions. And Mary Ann Lundquist, I am looking at you with a big old salute, thanking you for really keeping this going. So when Mary Ann brought to us as a choice for our selection for this book club, The Seed Keeper by Diane Wilson, I was so excited that we were going to read a novel and a good story to really sink our teeth into, and boy, have we ever. We're going to talk about it in assembly today, and we'll talk about it some more during our 12:15 program. She says this, the author says this: "I was inspired by a story I heard years ago while participating on the 150 walk to commemorate the forced removal of Dakota people from Minnesota in 1863. We know this as the Reconciliation Walk that begins in South Dakota and ends in Mankato to commemorate the largest mass murder in U.S. history, the 38+2 Dakota Warriors. According to the story that Diane Wilson heard, the women had little time to prepare for their removal. They were removed from the land in Minnesota and sent to the Crow Creek and Santee reservations. And they had no idea where they were being sent or where they would feed their families. And so they sowed the seeds saved from their gardens into the hems of their skirts and hid them in their pockets, ensuring that there would be seeds to plant in the spring. Even in the midst of crisis, they were thinking not only of their families, but also of future generations who would need those seeds. The novel tells this story through the voices of 4 Dakota women across several generations. These Indigenous women were not the only ones who did this. We know historically that African women who were enslaved also plaited seeds into their hair to bring to wherever it was they were being sent. They had no idea in their captivity, but they brought the seeds for future life. A powerful message. So here's a synopsis of the book. Rosalie Ironwing has grown up in the woods with her father, Ray, until one morning he doesn't return. Told she has no family, Rosalie is sent to live with a foster family near Mankato, where she meets the rebellious Gabby Makespeace in a friendship that transcends the damaged legacies they've inherited. Years later, Rosalie returns to her childhood home and begins to confront the past on a search for family, identity, and a community where she can finally belong. In the process, she learns what it means to be descended from women with souls of iron. Women who have protected their families, their traditions, and a precious cache of seeds through generations of hardship and loss, through war and the insidious trauma of boarding schools. Weaving together the voices of 4 indelible women, The Seed Keeper is a beautifully told story of reawakening, of remembering their original relationship to the seeds and through them to their ancestors. Can I just see by a show of hands how many of you have read or listened to the book? Pretty good many. Wonderful. So Diane Wilson, I was very curious about her to find out what was, she said she heard this story, but what was her own story? I wanted to know. And she has another piece that is published in the book, A Good Time for the Truth. We read this as a part of an anti-racism reading group a few years ago. And so A Good Time for the Truth, Race in Minnesota, is published by the Minnesota Historical Press. And so she tells this story, and I'm really compelled by how she, now that I've read The Seed Keeper, how I hear this story echoed out of it. As I watched, I thought of my mother, who was enrolled at the Rosebud Reservation and grew up in a boarding school on the Pine Ridge Reservation. After her family fled the Depression in South Dakota to look for work in Minneapolis, she married a young man of Swedish descent and raised her children far removed from any Native community. My siblings and I attended predominantly white schools where we learned a version of history that could not explain my mother's silence about her past. Why she and her aunts attended boarding school, or why she received an annual check for allotment land in South Dakota that was so small that she and my aunts used to laugh about their inheritance. My father, on the other hand, recognized only that we were white, like him. As an adult, I spent many years learning who my mother's family was, a process that forced me to discover a different history from the one I was taught in school. Our family story led me to the hard truth about the genocide of Native American people in this country and the earlier generations of children who were forced to attend boarding school. My family's small role in this history had been shaped by the government policies that ultimately threatened either assimilation or extermination. Government policies that threatened either assimilation or extermination. Finally, I understood my mother's silence. I was left with the question of what, if anything, I could do to transform the legacy of pain and loss I had inherited. Our theme this month is On the Path of Courage. And I am so moved by Diane Wilson and other Indigenous writers' courage. And especially Miss Wilson, she heard and she crafted a story of generations of love and loss and a tie to the land. Her own path is one of courage to do the deep work of grief and then the work of return and renewal. And she based her story on food systems and seeds. Diane Wilson has previously been the executive director of Dream of Wild Harvest and the Native American Alliance for Food Sovereignty. I think I have that acronym right. So very much interested in her work outside of her writing work in how a return to the land and the stories that are held in the seeds are passed down generation to generation, and how those seeds themselves are healing. Ella Deloria, who is a Yankton Sioux, wrote, "The ultimate aim of Dakota life was quite simple. One must obey kinship rules. One must be a good relative. To be a good relative is to attend to the seeds, to the land, to the prairie, to the soil, to the sun, to the rain, to be to each other, to the animals and the plants, and to each other." And that is the theme that runs through the book, and the courage that's required to attend to those relationships. Toward the end of the book, an elder Carlos says, "People don't understand how hard it is to be an Indian." I'm not talking about all the sad history. I'm talking about a way of life that demands your best every single day. To be a good relative, to obey kinship rules, is a demanding way to be. But can I imagine in my comfort and convenience in my world what it would take to be a good relative in every step, every day? To make being Dakota, he says, means every step you take is a prayer. Can I imagine what it is like to walk on this earth, each step as a prayer to good relation, to good kinship? That is demanding. There was a tall grass prairie in southern and western Minnesota. A sea of grass, a prairie formed over thousands of years, a vast landscape of deep topsoil, and hundreds of species of plants and animals. The tall grass prairie. Between 1830 and 1900, as Minnesota had an insatiable desire for land, settlers and agribusiness, we became the wheat capital of the world. There was an insatiable desire for land, and virtually all of the tall grass prairie was plowed under by European settlers eager to establish homesteads and farms on this virgin, fertile soil. The largest, most diverse ecosystem in the central United States was virtually destroyed within 70 years. And in its place came a new form of agriculture, monoculture. You know about monoculture. It was the national leader. We were the national leader in wheat production. Ms. Wilson writes that the clash that began in 1492 was as much about our drastically different food systems as it was about our differing values, our languages, and spirituality. Throughout the government's multifaceted assimilation policies, controlling native food systems has been a consistent and deadly theme. So it's difficult often for me as a white woman to hear how bad settler colonialism was, how bad racist policies of the United States were. Oh, it's exhausting. And if it's exhausting for me, imagine how much more exhausting for people who live it, who live on the side of oppression of it. Those policies have been pretty good to me. And I think as I think of courage, we are all facing the loss of climate and habitat. Those policies that may have been good for us for a while aren't good for anybody anymore. Monoculture agriculture is terrible for the land and the plants and the planets. I think we all know this. I don't have to go at length into that. In the book, she talks about Mangento. Is that the name of it? Mangento. Not a very, she didn't conceal very much her disdain for Monsanto. I think I can say that. It wasn't hard to figure out who she was talking about in that. And her husband, John Meester, descendant of German immigrants who is white, has a family farm. And she marries him and begins to garden on his farm. And then Mangento comes to town and says, oh, these are hard farm years. We're going to help you. We've got magic seeds. And there's no downside to the magic seeds. You'll have guaranteed yield, but you can only buy our seeds. And you have to only buy our fertilizer and only buy our poison, our insecticide. And so she goes through what happens to the land and to the people who love the land. John Meester, her husband, he loves that land. It was the land that his family settled, and the farm's been there a long time. But she talks about how he has a hard time reconciling the either or of it. I think the thing that's important to me is that we know we're all affected by this loss of climate and habitat and species and lack of choice in the food we have. We go to the supermarket and it's an array of beautiful food. We are abundant in what we can buy, but fewer and fewer real choices. And if you want to eat organic, it's terribly expensive. We are caught in what agribusiness wants to sell us. And one of the elders says, Ernie Whiteman, an Arapaho elder, says, if you control the food, you control the people. If you control the food, you control the people. So, what do we do with our climate grief? This is a very lively question for me. What do we do with our climate grief? Our grief for our country, our grief for all the ways that grief shows up for us. And just now, it doesn't feel like there's a shoe waiting to drop. The last 2 years have been so hard. And so just now it feels a little more stable. But for me, that grief continues to wash up in waves, and it feels paralyzing sometimes. I want to say that for me, grief and beauty, joy and sorrow are woven fine. This exquisitely beautiful autumn that we have had here in Minneapolis. A few more days, maybe. That we can love this planet when she shows off. When she shows off. Our great Earth Mother that gives us everything we need. We can love her and also be in grief. And where I think courage comes in is that it's courage to keep moving forward in the face of apocalypse. Rosemary Rodmacher says, courage does not always roar. Sometimes it is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. Courage to step out of our comfort zones, to do our interior work on what it means to have the face of the settler. When I was reading this book, it sort of rocked me back on my heels, the most obvious thing in the world. Oh my God, I'm the settler people. The most obvious thing in the world, and it just, psh, ding. The courage to do our interior work, to attend to our health, to repair a relationship, to leave a relationship, to run for office, to get sober, to tell the truth, to keep our own counsel, to let go, the courage to be vulnerable, the courage to confront our complicity in systems of injustice. So I said that I sort of had that awakening moment. And according to Ancestry.com, my family on both sides is descended from Scots, Irish, and Northern European stock. I think of them as pioneers. They were probably not the first wave of folks who settled land. And if our history goes back that far to the pioneers, I haven't read it. My folks were rural farm folks working with cotton and cattle, some owners of the land and some tenant farmers. I always assumed in the game of cowboy and Indians, we were on the side of the cowboys, while the Indians represented something exotic or pitiful. And the damage that popular fiction and Hollywood did to Native people in this country is beyond shameful, actually to all oppressed people. It doesn't make me a bad person that I came from people who were settlers and that I am now a settler occupying indigenous land. Doesn't make me a bad person that that is so. It does require courage to step forward and engage where I can. As a climate activist, as a racial justice activist, wherever any of us fall on the continuum of oppression and privilege, we all have a job to do. I am grateful for books and stories that do not center white people and my experience. I've read those stories, and I learned the same history in class that Diane Wilson did. Most of us in this room learned that history. And we have to do, as adults, the work of unlearning it. And it takes courage to be present with that, to not let ourselves get hooked by being offended, and recognize that that's our colonialism that wants to get hooked. I invite you into that courageous work and recognize where seeds of courage come up for you, where you are connected to the land and the food that you eat. And if you are not, gently, lovingly ask yourself, why not? I think we'll sing. This song had its birth here many years ago, I think. Lady of the Season's Laughter is number 51. It may have been before the Reverend Kendall Gibbons came to FUS, but she was your minister for a long time, and I'm sure you sang this song a few times. Number 51 in the Gray Songbook, and if you'll stand as you're willing and able, we'll sing all 4 verses.
Lady of the season's laughter, in the summer's warmth be near. When the winter follows after, teach our spirits not to fear. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the coming year.
We start right into that verse then.
Sister of the evening starlight, in the falling shadows stay. Here among us till the far light of tomorrow's dawning ray. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning day. burdens, bring our labors safe to birth. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning earth. Goddess of all time's progression, stand with us when we engage, hands and hearts to end oppression, writing history's fairer page. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning age.
And Keith, if you'll come and extinguish our chalice and say the words with me, please. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. All these we carry in our hearts and in our minds until we are together again. I'm going to share these closing words by Joy Harjo, and then after I share these words, you can be seated if you like. Mark will play for us Acrobatia, and I invite you all to come up to the stage, grab an organic apple, imperfect, lovely, see the back of the earth sculpture, and then join us downstairs. These words from Joy Harjo. I release you, my beautiful and terrible fear. I release you. You were my beloved and hated twin, but now I don't know you as myself. May it be so, and go in peace.